Hey guys, tonight we set out on the open Pacific. The sky so wide and deep above you that it feels like you're lying at the bottom of a great blue bowl. The moon isn't quite up yet, so the stars are sharp, scattered, and impossibly ancient. More numerous than the grains of sand stuck between your toes. You're standing at the water's edge, a big outrigger canoe looming nearby, lashed together with coconut fiber and the last stubborn hope of humanity. As a light breeze brushes your cheek, and the ocean heaves out that salt-heavy breath, you suddenly remember, there is no compass, no phone, not even a soggy map. Just you, some memorized stories, and the hopeful flicker of distant starlight. You probably won't survive this, not gonna lie. But at least you'll go down in history as one of the world's most gloriously lost sleepwalkers. Hey guys, tonight we travel way, way back, beyond the pyramids, before the Greeks, to a land of early cities and gentle, river-fed mornings. You crack your eyes open just as the first hint of pale sunlight sneaks through the woven reeds of your window. The air is already warm, carrying the earthy smell of yesterday's baked bread and the faintest whiff of wet clay. Somewhere, a distant rooster is probably still learning to crow. And you, yes, you, are waking up in ancient Samaria, the original home of "let's just take it easy today." So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. Thank you. And as always, I'd love to know where you're listening from and how your day has been. Tell me all about it down in the comments. I really do read every single one, and some of your stories are more soothing than any ancient lullaby. Now, dim the lights, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. There's something deeply odd about staring at the sea at midnight. Every sense goes on high alert. Your ears prick for the slap of waves, the faint click of a crab burrowing into sand, maybe even a distant dog barking at nothing in particular. You wriggle your toes, half expecting some prehistoric mollusk to sidle over and claim your pinky as rent. But the focus tonight is not on the beach, but on the space beyond, the rolling, heaving, unpredictable Pacific. The kind of sea that has eaten ships, invented its own weather, and occasionally tossed up a coconut just to keep you guessing. You shuffle a little closer to the canoe. The hull is rough under your palm, smelling of smoke and salt. Your crew, your cousins, neighbors, and one uncle who claims you can speak whale, are busy packing the last bundles of taro and, inexplicably, a large bag of dried bananas. No one brings a change of clothes. Why bother? You'll either end up soaked or legendary. There's a quiet sense of, here we go again, that seems to settle over every ancient voyage. As if the ancestors are all snickering behind your back, betting whether you'll make it to sunrise or just wind up paddling in circles and inventing the world's first maritime stand-up routine. Someone points skyward, tracing out a zigzag between bright stars with their finger. There's no grid, no lines, nothing to orient you, except a string of stories so old they're practically DNA at this point. Follow that one, they say, gesturing vaguely at a cluster that looks suspiciously like a handful of spilled rice. Historians still argue whether these constellations were universal across islands, or a patchwork of local legends and imagination. The wind changes, carrying the mingled scents of seaweed, wet wood, and your neighbor's regrettable garlic breath. As you push the canoe off the sand, water splashes up, cold and electric against your ankles. The outrigger bobs, not so gently, and you immediately realize the Pacific is not a sleepy pond. It's a live thing, breathing, shifting, never quite on your side. Mainstream history will tell you that Polynesian voyaging was calculated, the product of centuries of incremental genius. But here's the quirky reality. Half the time, it's luck, a touch of stubbornness, and maybe a dolphin or two deciding you're entertaining enough to survive. You settle onto a narrow wooden seat, legs tucked in, wishing you'd practice squatting like a real sailor instead of a bored office worker. The paddle feels right in your hands, though, smooth, worn, and humming with silent stories. "Don't drop it," whispers the voice of every ancestor ever, probably, because paddles lost at sea have an uncanny knack for becoming someone else's problem 2 islands over. Waves slap gently against the hull. Somewhere off in the dark, another canoe creaks. The stars reflect, wobbly and enchanting, in every ripple. It's fine, you tell yourself. People have been doing this for millennia, and at least if I get lost, it'll make a great sleep story. Your uncle, the one who talks to whales, grins and points ahead. First stop, wherever the stars want to take us. Honestly, you'd like to see a cruise ship try to sell that itinerary. You're moving now, sliding out of the shallows, the beach shrinking behind you. The sound changes, softer, yet heavier. The world becomes endless blue and black. You wonder if you're the only one secretly counting how many snacks you brought, just in case. There's no going back now, only forward, deeper into the mysterious Pacific. Somewhere out there, under the same stars, thousands of years ago, a group not so different from you did the same. Pushed out, hearts pounding, trusting in their wits, their stories, and maybe, just maybe, the memory of someone else's successful trip before them. Mainstream history will tell you this is the triumph of human ingenuity. Your thighs will tell you it's mostly an endurance contest with splinters. And with that, you're off. Your journey into sleep, into the past, and into the endless gentle hum of waves under a starlit Pacific sky. You're barely an hour from shore, and already your butt is numb. A detail mainstream textbooks somehow leave out. The canoe itself is a minor miracle. Long, lean, and built to dance with waves, instead of punch through them. You glance around at the joinery. No screws, no nails, just endless loops of coconut fiber, like the world's most determined friendship bracelet, holding the planks together. The prow rises up, elegantly carved, daring the sea to do its worst. It's not just a canoe. It's the Pacific's answer to a Swiss Army knife, with storage for water, food, live chickens, don't ask, and, most importantly, hope. Someone slaps your shoulder and launches into a story about the first canoe ever built. Historians still argue whether the Lapita people really invented the double-hulled voyaging canoe, or if that's just another legend passed down to make everyone's ancestors seem a little cooler. But as you reach out and tap the hull, you're grateful for whoever had the idea. These canoes are built to bend, flex, and somehow not come apart, even when the sea seems intent on testing every knot. The fact that one cracked coconut shell and a length of tree bark can transform into a vehicle fit for the world's longest camping trip is honestly astonishing. You sneak a peek over the edge, trying not to imagine what's swimming underneath. The water is so clear and deep, it feels like you're hovering in the sky, and the hull creaks as it rides the rhythmic lift and drop of the swells. On calmer days, you'd be able to spot flying fish leaping like silver commas, or even a lazy turtle paddling in parallel. Tonight, you're lucky if you can see your own toes. The ocean can go from glass to boiling cauldron in less time than it takes your uncle to invent a new fish story. The builders of these vessels were revered, a mix of engineer and artist. You picture them crouched in the shade, using nothing but stone tools to shape massive logs, breadfruit or koa, if you're feeling fancy, into perfect symmetry. There's a dance to canoe making. Every piece must balance the others. Every seam must be tight but not strangled. Quirky fact, some islands placed carved wooden amulets inside the hull for luck, or, depending on the village, as a bribe for the resident sea gods. Whether those gods ever actually checked is up for debate. But hey, better safe than sorry. Mainstream histories tend to gloss over the less glamorous bits, like how hauling a finished canoe to the water required half the village, plus liberal use of banana leaves as makeshift sleds. You imagine the laughter, the complaints, the inevitable arguments about whose turn it is to push. Your legs ache in sympathy. At sea, you learn to trust the canoe's rhythm. Every slap of water against the hull, every squeak of the lashings, every shift in the wood's tone is a signal. Sometimes a warning, sometimes just the boat's way of humming a lullaby. You're not so much steering as coaxing, keeping your weight just right, your paddle strokes gentle. The canoe moves best when you're not trying too hard, when you let the wood and water sort things out between themselves. The outrigger, a smaller float lashed parallel to the main hull, is your secret weapon against capsizing. Without it, you'd be swimming by now, and not in a fun, vacation-y way. The design is genius. Light, strong, flexible. Like a palm tree that's decided to pursue a side hustle as a life preserver. There's an old story about a chief who tried to show off by paddling without his outrigger, only to be rescued by a flock of giggling seabirds. Historians still argue whether that's proof of ancient slapstick or just poetic justice. Sometimes you stare at the knots and lashings and wonder how they hold. Coconut fiber, soaked and twisted until it's tougher than any modern rope, weaves in and out of the wood, binding it all together. On a long night, you find yourself talking to the knots, promising them treats if they just hang in there until sunrise. If knots could laugh, these would probably be doing it right now. As the hours roll on, the boat becomes your world. The slap of waves, the rustle of palm leaves stashed underfoot, the gentle bump of a neighbor's elbow as they drift off. You wonder who first realized that you could travel thousands of miles in a glorified fruit basket and come out the other side with your hair only slightly more ridiculous. You also wonder if anyone packed a pillow. The canoe creaks, the stars drift overhead, and you're left pondering a simple truth. Every inch of progress across the Pacific rests on the craftsmanship of those wooden hulls, the faith in fiber lashings, and the sheer stubborn joy of venturing into the unknown. Even if the journey ends with a leaky boat and sunburn, at least you'll have some good stories to bring home. Assuming, of course, you ever find home again. 1084. Awaiting continue. You said. Continue. ChatGPT said. Section 3. Your legs have settled into a kind of uneasy truce with the canoe's narrow seat, but your mind is wide awake, eyes tilted skyward. You get why they call these navigators stargazers. It's not just poetic, it's painfully practical. The stars above are so crisp, so plentiful, that you have to squint to pick out which ones matter. There's no Big Dipper here, at least not in any way you remember from childhood planetarium visits. Instead, you hear whispers about the shark's jaws, the canoe bailer, the frigate bird's path. Everyone around you seems to have their own secret favorites, passed down through generations. One of your crewmates hums a tune, a mnemonic for remembering which stars rise where and when. The melody drifts along with the salty air, half lullaby, half cosmic cheat sheet. Mainstream historians agree that Polynesian navigators mapped their routes by memorizing star paths, imaginary highways stretching from horizon to horizon, each linking islands like dots in a grand, invisible connect-the-dots puzzle. But here's where it gets quirky. Some elders claim that only those born on a certain kind of night, or possessing a specific birthmark, can truly read the stars. Whether that's scientific, spiritual, or just a clever way to keep the kids out of your canoe, historians still argue. You focus on a line of stars low in the eastern sky. Someone nudges you. That's your target tonight. See how they rise, one after the other. Keep that angle off the bow. You try to memorize the pattern, but the more you stare, the more the stars seem to play tricks, shifting and winking, as if they're in on the joke. The boat rocks, and you try not to think about how your sense of direction back on land usually involves Google Maps and a lot of sign. The constellations are more than just stories. They're tools. A star's rising point tells you where east is. Its setting point shows you west. Mid-sky, they guide you north or south, depending on which star family you're tracking. You remember an uncle bragging about navigating from Fiji to Samoa just by following the rising Pleiades. A feat so impressive you wonder if he actually did it, or just liked the way the story sounded, after 2 coconuts worth of kava. On especially cloudy nights, the stars disappear. That's when things get interesting, and a little terrifying. One old-timer confides in you. If you lose the stars, you listen for their echoes in the waves. Wait, what? Historians still debate whether navigators truly believed the stars' presence could be felt in the ocean's mood, or if it's just another beautiful bedtime story. Either way, you're not about to argue with someone who can cross 1,000 miles without even glancing at a compass. There's a gentle humor among your crew, a sort of cosmic eye roll every time someone gets a star wrong. Nice try, but that's not the flying fish, unless you want to spend the night paddling in circles. It's oddly comforting. These jokes, half teasing, half instructional, are as much a part of navigation as any star. Your eyes adjust, and soon you're picking out more patterns. Zigzags, arcs, a shape that someone insists looks like your cousin after a haircut gone wrong. In the gaps between stories, you start to feel the rhythm. How the stars rise and set in predictable arcs. How certain clusters always signal the coming dawn. Every navigator has their own way of tracking time, of measuring distance. Some count heartbeats, others sing verses. A few claim to just know when it's time to shift course. Mainstream scholars will tell you Polynesian navigation is the result of keen observation and memory. But your aching head tells you there's at least a little magic mixed in. After all, who else but a magician, or a truly desperate sailor, could use pinpricks of light as guideposts across an ocean that seems determined to keep all its secrets? A quirky fact to keep you awake. Some navigators gave personal names to the brightest stars. arguing with each other over who discovered what, much like modern astronomers fighting over minor planets. Some even claimed a star was lucky or terribly unlucky for certain voyages. But historians still argue if this was just an elaborate way to blame navigation mistakes on the cosmos, rather than the paddler. As the night stretches on, your neck gets stiff, your eyelids heavy, but the stars keep beckoning, the boat glides, and you realize that this celestial choreography is as old as the islands themselves. Maybe, just maybe, tonight you'll spot the shark's jaws. And if you do, you'll know you're on the right track. Or at least, you'll have another story to tell when you finally drift off to sleep.
The stars guide you, but soon you realize they're only half the story. Beneath your boat, the Pacific is alive with subtle patterns. Swells rolling in long, predictable lines, winds changing their song as the night deepens. You reach down, skimming your hand along the water's cool surface, as if you might feel a current tugging you the right way. The ocean's texture is like a sheet with invisible folds and ripples, and somehow, the best navigators read it like a sleep-deprived librarian skimming a favorite novel. You watch the master navigator. Let's call him Uncle because every good canoe seems to come with at least one. He crouches by the side, palm hovering just above the swells, feeling the ocean's pulse. There, he says, and you listen, straining to pick up what he hears. The faint clunk of a different wave, the wind's sigh shifting just a little. Mainstream historians will tell you that wave and wind navigation, called reading the swell, is as old as voyaging itself. Every island sends out waves, refracted by reefs and sandbars, creating a kind of watery fingerprint. If you're patient, you can learn to sense the presence of land before you see it. Of course, historians still argue whether these skills are truly reliable or just sailors' luck masquerading as science. Tonight, the swells come in slow, even breaths, like a giant snoring just under your hull. You try to match your movements to the rhythm, paddle stroke steady, letting the canoe's natural balance do the work. It's a dance, leaning, shifting, trusting that your crew knows when to laugh and when to hush. Sometimes a sudden bump sends a nervous giggle through the boat. You blame a mischievous fish, but deep down, you hope it's not something bigger, checking out its midnight snack menu. Every now and then, the wind veers, catching you off guard. Polynesian sailors were expert at reading the winds, naming them after moods, directions, even gossip-worthy relatives. There's the grumpy ant wind, the lazy cousin breeze, and the we should have stayed home gust that everyone agrees is the worst. Your own hair starts sticking up in sympathy, and you tuck your chin down to avoid swallowing an extra helping of salt air. Uncle demonstrates how to spot a wind shift, a flutter in a sail, a sudden coolness, a change in the slap of water against the hull. Trust your skin, he says. It knows the story before your eyes do. You do your best, but mostly your skin just knows you forgot to reapply coconut oil, and now you're halfway to becoming human driftwood. The boat glides onward, and you begin to notice how the water changes. Some nights, the sea is as soft as a sigh. Others, it bristles with short, choppy peaks. Old-timers say they can feel the memory of distant storms in the shape of a swell. And sometimes, when you're half asleep, you imagine you can too. Is that really Tahiti calling, or just the ghost of a passing whale? Scholars still debate whether such perceptions are learned skills or the ocean playing tricks on your overworked senses. A quirky tradition. On some islands, navigators would whisper to the waves, offering little apologies or requests. The ocean, they believed, is a living being, part stern ant, part playful trickster. Lose your patience, and you'll end up circling the same atoll for days, or so the stories go. You try whispering to a particularly stubborn swell. No reply. Unless you count a splash right in your face. Night gives way to the faintest silver at the horizon, and you notice how the air feels different. Is it the promise of land, or just wishful thinking? The canoe moves as if on rails, rocking in a gentle cradle. You think about how Polynesian navigation is both art and science, part calculation, part pure gut feeling. And as you lean back, listening to the ever-present slap and hush of water, you remember Uncle's advice. If all else fails, trust the canoe. It wants to get home too. You close your eyes for a moment, feeling the boat's heartbeat and the endless motion. Maybe, just maybe, you'll wake up knowing the way by instinct. Or maybe you'll just wake up with a sunburn and an extra appreciation for GPS. Either way, the ocean's secret language keeps whispering, and you drift forward, one wave at a time. Dawn creeps in quietly, painting the clouds in shades of gold and pink as you yawn and rub sleep from your eyes. The world is a soft watercolor now. Sky, sea, and canoe all melting together in pastel haze. But there's no time to get dreamy. You're on bird watch. Not the lazy backyard kind, but the ancient Polynesian practice of scanning the horizon for clues that only the sharpest eyes and sleepiest navigators ever spot. Someone nudges your shoulder and points to a tiny speck flitting above the water. A frigate bird, slicing the air with its long forked tail. That one's got somewhere to be, whispers your neighbor, grinning. Polynesian navigators have long known that certain seabirds never stray too far from land, especially at sunrise and sunset. Mainstream historians confirm that following these birds was sometimes the difference between striking an island or just meeting endless blue. Of course, some legends claim the first person to follow a frigate bird ended up discovering a sandbar and 3 very unimpressed crabs. Historians still argue if the practice began as careful observation or one very optimistic mistake. It's not just birds either. You're coached to watch the clouds. Some hover low and thick, signaling islands with their own personal weather systems. In the distance, a mound of puffy white sits stubbornly on the horizon. Land cloud, Uncle mutters, like he's naming a secret ingredient. It's a clue. Warm, humid air rises from forested atolls, gathering into cloud hats that linger long after sunrise. If you're lucky, you'll spot a subtle green smudge beneath, the first hint of palm trees waving you in. Floating debris catches your eye. Driftwood, a tangle of seaweed, even the occasional coconut bobbing along. Every object is a sign, a breadcrumb in the vast ocean wilderness. The canoe glides past, and you imagine the first voyagers trading theories. That coconut floated west, so let's see if there's an island that way. Quirky fact: some navigators insisted on picking up odd finds for luck, tucking them under the seat or lashing them to the prow. Whether this helped with navigation or just made for more interesting stories back home, historians still debate. You're invited to participate in this odd detective game. Eyes peeled for shadows on the water, the flutter of wings, the unlikely appearance of a log that clearly didn't grow in the middle of nowhere. It's an all-hands-on-deck experience, a kind of Where's Waldo for survival. There's gentle humor in the banter. Last one to spot a bird has to paddle the next hour, someone jokes. And suddenly, everyone becomes a professional ornithologist. Clouds change shape and mood throughout the day. You learn to read them like sentences. Tall columns hint at thunderstorms. Broad layers mean a stable sky. Once, Uncle swears he saw a cloud shaped exactly like his mother-in-law and promptly turned the boat around, just in case she was waiting on shore. You wonder if every family has that one uncle, and decide it's probably a universal law of navigation. Occasionally, a school of flying fish erupts from the waves, sparkling like silver confetti. Their leap means you're still in deep water, no shoals or reefs nearby. But if you spot dolphins, that's a different story. They sometimes circle the boat, steering you toward shallower seas or safer passages. Mainstream historians agree that dolphins and fish were both signposts and snack opportunities, though some scholars still argue whether the dolphins were helpful guides or just looking for an audience. By midday, the sun climbs high and the clues thin out. You shade your eyes, wishing for sunglasses, or better yet, a nap. But the hunt continues. Every drifting leaf, every shifting bird, a possible message from the sea. Polynesian navigation, you realize, is less about fixed rules and more about endless curiosity, intuition, and shared storytelling. If you find yourself paddling in circles, you laugh it off. After all, every mistake is a new legend for the next night around the fire. As the canoe slips across the sparkling sea, you smile at the thought that somewhere, centuries ago, another sleepy navigator was watching the same birds, reading the same clouds, and hoping their next landfall would bring fresh water, food, and a place to stretch their legs. Or, at the very least, a good story to pass on.
You lean back, the canoe creaking quietly beneath you, and try to picture the route you're taking, not on a paper map, those haven't been invented here, but inside your own head. Polynesian navigators, the true masters of mental mapping, built a living atlas from memory and tradition. You watch Uncle as he closes his eyes, chanting softly, lips moving in rhythm to the boat's gentle sway. He isn't praying, he's recalling a song that holds the map.
Every island, every reef, every passage has its own place in these chants. A sequence of landmarks encoded into poetry. Each verse a direction, each chorus a reminder to veer a little left at the invisible underwater mountain, or to paddle straight past the spot where the moonfish was supposedly spotted that one time. Mainstream historians know these mnemonic chants exist. They call them navigational lore, or wayfinding songs. But there's still debate about just how detailed and how universally shared these mental maps were. Some claim a single navigator could hold a mental map of an area larger than all of Western Europe. Others think that's just the world's oldest version of, "My dad can beat up your dad." You try to join in, mouthing the syllables. At first it's just nonsense, but then you realize it's all patterns and rhythm, just like the stars. Turn after the place where the clouds hang low. Steer toward the island with two mountains. Then listen for the birds that cry at sunrise. It's a GPS built from stories, and you're only beginning to understand how hard it is to keep it all straight. No one ever writes these routes down. To do so, you're told, is to disrespect the ancestors and risk the sea's displeasure. Everything must be passed on in person, from mouth to ear, in the flickering half-light of a beach fire, or the steady roll of a rocking canoe. Quirky fact. Some navigators would rehearse their mental maps by drawing them in the sand, only to erase them before anyone could see. A kind of security by obscurity, long before computers. Occasionally, Uncle interrupts himself to throw in a joke or a warning. Miss the second verse, and you'll spend the night talking to sea turtles. The others chuckle, and you sense the real purpose behind the humor. It's how they keep the details alive, how they make sure the lessons stick. When you're dazed from land and low on patience, it's easier to remember a funny rhyme about coconut crabs than a dry list of directions. Still, there are moments of doubt. Your mind drifts. What if you forget a line? What if the next landmark has changed, washed away by a storm, or just disguised by a trick of the light? Historians still argue whether these wayfinding songs were regularly updated or stayed frozen for generations. You start to wonder, what happens when you get lost? When the world looks nothing like the old stories promised? Someone tosses you a piece of taro, and you nearly drop it in the sea. Laughter erupts. A navigator who can't catch his food won't catch his island. It's a gentle reminder that you're still learning. Nobody expects perfection. Not when the world is always changing, shifting beneath your paddle. As the sun arcs higher, the chant lines on. You find yourself slipping into a trance, each line a wave, each refrain a star in the sky. If you lose your place, the others help you find it again. This is navigation by community, by memory, by trust. The map isn't just in your mind, it's in everyone's, woven together through endless repetition and shared adventure. Before you know it, You're humming along, your doubts fading into the background hum of the wind and water. Maybe you'll never remember every verse or every secret landmark, but for now, the rhythm is enough to carry you forward. Polynesian wayfinding isn't about precision, it's about connection. Each other, to the past, and to the sea that binds it all together. By now, the sun's high enough to roast your scalp, so you shuffle your weight and let your gaze drift to a pile of pottery shards nestled in a basket by your feet. At first glance, they're nothing special. Just a few broken bowls, sun-bleached and battered by salt. But Uncle leans in, his eyes twinkling. Lapita pottery, he says softly, like footprints across the ocean. Mainstream history books will tell you that the Lapita were the Pacific's earliest known navigators, spreading from island to island some 3,000 years ago, carrying with them not just food and seeds, but a signature style of pottery. Tiny triangles, swirls, dots pressed into wet clay by sure hands. These little artifacts are more than leftovers from old lunches. They're breadcrumbs, marking the path of migration. Every time a new island yielded up its cache of Lapita pottery, scholars got one step closer to mapping the great Polynesian expansion. But here's the quirky part. No one knows for sure whether these pots were prized treasures, everyday Tupperware, or just something to trade at the next stop. Historians still argue whether Lapita pottery was actually used for cooking, for ceremonies, or if it was simply a status symbol, proof that you'd made it across a particularly challenging stretch of open water and lived to tell the tale. Uncle picks up a shard and holds it to the light. The marks, though faint, are beautiful, tiny, precise, as if someone spent extra time making sure the bowl would impress the right people or the right spirits. He spins another tale. Some islands have stories of magical pots that never run dry, or bowls that always find their way home, bobbing over the waves like driftwood. Were these stories invented to explain the mysterious pottery scattered across the Pacific? Or did the pottery inspire the legends? That's another one for the historians still argue file. The Lapita people didn't just bring ceramics. They're thought to have introduced new plants, new animals, pigs, chickens, dogs, and maybe even new music. As you nibble on a chewy strip of coconut, you picture those first voyagers. Canoes stacked with clay pots, baskets of yams, a couple of sleepy dogs, and a family determined to find someplace fresh and green. Imagine paddling hundreds of miles with a crate of breakable dishes, all the while hoping you don't hit a big wave and wind up with a lap full of clay confetti. A shadow falls across the canoe, and you look up. Another cloud, another clue that land might be near. But Uncle isn't fooled. He reminds you that the Lapita didn't always find new islands on their first try. Sometimes they got lost, sometimes they doubled back, and sometimes, just sometimes, they found places so perfect they didn't want to leave. You trace the outline of a pottery shard and imagine the hands that made it. Thousands of years ago, someone humming a tune, smoothing the clay, watching children chase chickens on the sand. The Lapita left no written records, just their pots and a trail of DNA that connects you, right now, to a voyage older than any legend you've ever heard. The boat creaks, the ocean whispers, and for a moment, you're not just crossing water, you're crossing time. Every wave, every gust, every bit of pottery, a reminder that you're part of something big, something ancient, something that even the best historians still can't quite explain. You shift your legs, tuck the pottery safely away, and realize that these small things, pots, stories, the rhythm of paddles, are how you find your way, even when the map is only in your mind. And as you doze under the dappled shade of a makeshift sail, you dream of new islands, fresh clay, and the endless blue between. The sun is settling into its afternoon angle, casting everything in shimmering gold as you watch the navigator gather everyone close for what feels less like a lecture and more like a secret club meeting. The air inside the makeshift shelter, woven mats and spare sailcloth draped over the center of the canoe, grows thick with anticipation, and, to be honest, a whiff of someone's fermented fish snack. Uncle, ever the showman, drops his voice and motions for silence. This isn't just storytelling. You realize you're being initiated, however informally, into a navigator's secret society. In many Polynesian traditions, navigation knowledge isn't handed out with breakfast. It's guarded, passed from master to chosen apprentice. The rituals surrounding these teachings can get elaborate, equal parts respect, theater, and mild intimidation. You think about how modern clubs have passwords and funny handshakes. Here, the test might be whether you can recall the difference between the hunger wind and the homesick current at 2 in the morning. Mainstream historians generally agree that such societies existed. Membership was sometimes hereditary, sometimes earned through trial and error, or, as Uncle says, trial by staying awake for 3 days straight. There are tales of navigators isolating themselves for days, fasting and meditating, or performing quiet ceremonies with offerings of flowers, kava, or even a particularly shiny shell. No cell phones allowed, obviously. Quirky fact: on some islands, a successful navigator had their own set of songs and jokes, and the best ones could make even the sternest chief laugh on a rough crossing. Historians still argue whether these ceremonies were just cultural glue or a real way to keep navigation skills sharp and exclusive. The atmosphere shifts as Uncle traces shapes on the hull, whispering the names of distant islands and the winds that lead there. His hands move with the dancer's grace, and you find yourself repeating the patterns in your mind, afraid to lose even a scrap of this hard-won wisdom. Each gesture has a purpose, a direction, a monotonic, a gentle warning. Someone else joins in, quietly humming an old chant. You realize this is more than just tradition. It's how information survives when there's no written language, no textbooks, no backup on the cloud. You're handed a piece of cord, told to tie a knot without letting the end slip. If you can do this with your eyes closed, you're halfway to remembering the southern stars, Uncle jokes. You fumble, earning a round of gentle teasing. Here, mistakes are met with laughter, not scolding. But make no mistake, this is serious business. If you lose your cool in a real storm, all the funny stories in the world won't save you. As the afternoon stretches on, you sense a mix of competition and camaraderie among the navigators. Each one has their own pet theories, favorite chants, secret tricks for calming a fretful sea. Some claim a sip of coconut water at the right moment guarantees smooth sailing. Others swear by offerings to a favorite bird or reef. One navigator quietly ties a tiny fishhook to his necklace, rubbing it before every journey, a personal talisman against bad luck. Mainstream historians love these quirky details, but still debate how much was true technique and how much was, well, insurance. Every now and then, the group falls into silence, as if listening for a sign from the ocean. You feel it too, a sense that this knowledge is both precious and precarious, always on the edge of being lost. A joke breaks the tension. If you remember all this, you're ready to get lost with the best of us. The laughter is real, but so is the responsibility. As dusk approaches, you realize you're part of a lineage now, even if only for a single voyage. You tuck away the stories, the knots, the subtle gestures, the invisible tools of a navigator. Whether these societies were ancient guilds or just groups of insomniacs with good timing, historians still argue. But you can't deny the thrill of being let in, if only for a night, on the ocean's best-kept secrets. And as the sky starts to color with sunset, you think, maybe the real ritual is the act of learning together, laughing through mistakes, and sharing the weight of wonder as you cross this endless blue. Evening settles softly, bringing a hush to the boat, as your crew turns their minds to life afloat. The world is now an endless stage of water and sky, and comfort comes in small doses, like figuring out the least bumpy place to sleep. or the best spot to store the precious taro without it turning into a science experiment. You wiggle in your seat, hoping to escape the persistent ache in your lower back, but mostly you just learn to let your limbs go loose and sway with the rhythm of the waves. Tonight's dinner is a chilled taro cake, served with a garnish of sea air and a generous helping of mild complaints. There are no five-star restaurants here, only the culinary improvisation of hungry navigators. The taro's bland, but filling, and you chew as Uncle recalls the time someone mistook fermented breadfruit for coconut pudding, a disaster resulting in an emergency midnight swim. Mainstream historians note that Polynesian sailors stocked their canoes with taro, breadfruit, dried fish, and coconuts. High energy, low maintenance foods that could last for weeks. But every boat had its own secret recipes. Add a pinch of salt here, a stolen lime there, and suddenly you're a five-star chef in the middle of nowhere. Sleep, you quickly discover, is an art form at sea. You curl up wherever you can. Some brave souls nap right on the crossbeams, swaddled in woven mats, while others tuck themselves under a tarp and count stars instead of sheep. The boat never stops moving, so you become a connoisseur of gentle rocking, learning the difference between a soothing cradle and a warning that a wave is about to drench your backside. Quirky fact: some navigators claim to dream more vividly while at sea, crediting the ocean's constant motion as inspiration. Whether that's true or just a sailor's tall tale, historians still argue. The boat is a living, creaking thing, always nudging you awake or lulling you back into half sleep. Conversations ebb and flow, full of gentle humor. If you snore loud enough, the dolphins might steer us home, someone teases. Speaking of dolphins, you spot a pair leaping beside the canoe, their bodies flashing silver in the fading light. There's a hush, a collective sense of wonder. Dolphins, in Polynesian lore, are seen as both omens and allies, sometimes guiding lost canoes, sometimes just showing off their aquatic gymnastics for an appreciative audience. Mainstream scholars note there are documented cases where dolphins seem to lead boats to safety, but just as many stories where the animals led voyagers on wild detours. Historians still debate whether the navigators genuinely believed dolphins were helpers or just enjoyed their company on lonely nights. You quietly wish for a dolphin escort on every journey, or at the very least a guarantee against sharks. The chores never end. Bailing water from the hull, patching the occasional leak, untangling fishing lines. There's laughter even here. Someone finds a hermit crab stowed away under a pile of rope, and for the next hour, the little stowaway becomes the boat's official mascot. You tell yourself you'll be fine, as long as you're not asked to share your blanket. Night falls, bringing a deeper calm. You settle into the rhythm. Eat, rest, bail, paddle, joke, repeat. The air is cooler, the stars sharper, and for a brief moment, the ocean feels as welcoming as your childhood bedroom. The only thing missing is the hum of a fan, replaced here by the steady breath of the waves.
As you close your eyes, you think about all those who made this same crossing centuries before you, what they dreamed, what they feared, and whether they too whispered thanks to the dolphins and sea breezes. Sleep comes slowly, but eventually you drift off, rocked by the ocean, comforted by the thought that even on the world's loneliest roads, you're never truly alone.
Morning dawns brighter than you'd like, and for a while you just squint at the sun and marvel at how the ocean can look the same in every direction. An endless looping screensaver of blue, blue, and more blue. It's easy to imagine getting lost out here, and sure enough, the old story starts circulating. Uncle leans in, conspiratorial, and spins a tale about a navigator who once left home for a 3-day hop and showed up 2 years later with a beard, a parrot, and a distinctly improved attitude toward land. Shipwrecks and lost voyages are part of the myth and the reality. There are legends of canoes dashed on coral reefs, of explorers blown off course by capricious winds, of heroic returns that become instant classics around every fire. Mainstream historians confirm that some voyages ended badly, but just as many ended in triumphant homecomings that inspired generations. The quirky twist? Some navigators insisted on bringing lucky rocks or family heirlooms along for protection, and the items that survived shipwrecks became instant treasures, partly sacred, partly reminders to double-check your knots next time. You grip the edge of the canoe and watch the water swirl, dark and mysterious. The Pacific can be gentle, but it can turn brutal in a heartbeat. Someone quietly recounts the story of the famous navigator who spent months drifting, living on rainwater and the occasional seabird, only to be discovered singing to the fish with a sunburned nose and a perfectly intact memory of his star chants. Historians still argue whether such feats are testament to extraordinary skill or just the ocean's odd sense of humor. Amid the tales of disaster, there's an equal abundance of tales about lucky returns. Navigators who got lost, found an unknown island, and ended up starting a whole new community. It's a reminder that, in Polynesian navigation, failure is sometimes just the first chapter of another success story. You find yourself thinking about how, out here, mistakes and miracles are two sides of the same coin, often separated only by the direction of the next breeze. The canoe is oddly quiet for a while, each person lost in their own thoughts. Someone offers a piece of dried fish, and you accept with gratitude, chewing as you ponder your own chances of making it home if you got blown off course. Would you sing to the fish? Would you befriend the parrot? Or would you, like so many lost voyagers, learn to read the sea in new ways and find your own way back? One lucky star, one patient current at a time. You look over at the others, comforted by the way humor sneaks back in. If you get lost, just tell everyone you were off inventing a new island, someone clips. It's a joke, but there's a kernel of truth. Every island has its story of arrival, loss, and the stubborn refusal to give up. Maybe that's what makes these tales so soothing. The idea that even in the worst-case scenario, there's hope, there's a story, there's a way forward, even if it's a little roundabout. Mainstream historians sometimes struggle to separate myth from fact. They analyze drift patterns, storm records, even the genetic footprints left by ancient wanderers. But still, the stories endure, of miraculous returns, of shipwrecked navigators who turn disaster into legend, of the ocean's endless capacity for both mischief and mercy. As the sun climbs higher and the canoe continues its journey, you realize that, for every tale of loss at sea, there's a matching story of someone who came back, wiser, sunburned, but alive, carrying a new song to add to the navigator's lore. You close your eyes for a moment, letting the rhythm of the water steady you, and whisper a quiet promise to the ocean. If you ever get lost, you'll do your best to come back with a good story, preferably one with fewer shipwrecks and more parrots. The afternoon sky darkens, clouds stacking up in a way you now recognize as trouble. You tug your mat a little tighter and glance at the horizon, which has started to blur into a moody gray. Cyclones and rogue waves, these are the true nightmares of the open Pacific. You feel a collective shift in the canoe, every crew member alert, scanning sky and water for the first hint of wind that bites, not caresses. You hear Uncle's steady voice over the rising gust. Time to tie everything down, except your sense of humor. The joke is thin, but it eases your tension as you work the knots. Mainstream historians agree that Polynesian voyagers faced cyclones, sudden squalls, and monstrous road waves with nothing but their wits, their boats, and an impressive amount of optimism. The quirky detail? Some navigators brought along charms woven from pandanus leaves, or painted storm faces on paddles to scare off bad weather. If only it were so simple. Historians still argue whether these rituals had real navigational benefits, or simply gave everyone a little extra courage to face the tempest. The wind howls, and rain begins as a gentle patter, then sharpens into icy needles. The canoe rocks violently, forcing you to crouch low and grip the hull. Uncle shouts instructions. Paddle on the left, balance on the right. Keep your eyes on the horizon even if the horizon keeps vanishing behind walls of spray. You do your best, heart pounding, drenched in blinking salt water from your eyes. Suddenly, a wave much larger than the rest rears up. A robe, a freak, a living mountain. The canoe pitches skyward, then crashes down with a shudder that rattles your bones. Someone makes a joke about finally getting that free bath, but you're not sure whether to laugh or cry. Your hands ache from gripping the paddle. Your knees bruise against the forts. For a moment, you wish for modern life jackets, GPS beacons, and maybe a towel. And yet, in the chaos, you see why the navigators are so respected. Every move is practiced, every action deliberate. The crew rides the waves, shifting their weight, adjusting their course by instinct and ancient habit. You notice Uncle's eyes darting between the clouds and the sea, looking for the telltale signs that the worst is past. A sudden stillness, a new color to the water, the wind dropping as fast as it came. As quickly as it began, the squall sputters out. The rain slows, the sea calms, and the only sound is the heavy breathing of exhausted paddlers. You wring out your mat and give Uncle a grateful, soggy grin. It's a miracle you made it through, though the canoe, held together by nothing but faith, fiber, and stubbornness, now seems stronger than ever. Polynesian navigators learn from every storm. Afterward, there's always a debrief, a gentle roast of whoever screamed the loudest, and a solemn recounting of what worked, what didn't, and which lucky talisman gets to ride on the prow for the next crossing. Mainstream scholars note that these oral postmortems probably saved countless lives, passing knowledge down the generations, one storm at a time. Still, historians debate whether these lessons were always enough to prepare a navigator for the next nightmare. After all, the ocean rarely repeats itself. As the clouds break and the sky returns to its blue serenity, you marvel at the resilience of those who cross these seas with nothing but memory, teamwork, and faith in a handful of stories. You dry off, grateful for the return of sunlight and silence, and promise yourself that, next time, you'll pack 2 talismans, just in case. Hours after the storm, the world feels washed clean. A kind of dazzling quiet that settles over everything, broken only by the rhythmic drip of water from the paddle and the occasional triumphant squawk from a gull. You huddle closer with the crew, drying out under the midday sun, until someone spots it. A thin, wavering sliver of green on the horizon, so faint you wonder if your tired eyes are playing tricks. Hearts thump. It's the moment every navigator lives for, making landfall. Everyone perks up, scanning the distance for confirmation. The navigator stands, wobbling with the boat's gentle roll, and studies the green line. Is it an island, or just a low cloud pretending to be one? Mainstream historians agree that land sighting in Polynesian navigation is a moment of supreme tension and skill. It's not just about seeing, it's about interpreting dozens of subtle cues. The quirky part? Some crews use the reflection of an island's greenery on the clouds above to spot land long before it appeared at sea level. Still, historians debate whether this cloud spotting was reliable navigation or just hopeful seeing after days of wishful thinking. Uncle, ever the professional, squints at the clouds, then points to a patch of water shimmering a brighter blue. There, the reef's shallower here. That means land. You nod, trusting his call, and the crew paddles with renewed energy. There's a low, electric tension in the air, the mixture of hope, nerves, and the deep, comical fear that after all this, you'll arrive on the wrong island and have to invent a convincing excuse. The closer you get, the more you realize that the sea is telling you secrets. The watercolor changes from dark indigo to turquoise, signaling shallows. The waves break with a different voice, murmuring over distant coral. You squint, and suddenly, yes, there are palm trees waving, unmistakable, behind a fringe of white sand. Relief washes through you, along with a sudden spike of worry. Land is in sight, but landing is another story altogether. Mainstream history confirms that landings could be the trickiest part of the voyage. Uncharted reefs, hidden sandbars, unpredictable surf, all could capsize a canoe in a heartbeat. The quirky ritual here? Some crews would sing a special arrival song to appease the spirits of the new island, or toss the last of their food into the sea as thanks. Historians still argue whether these traditions had a navigational purpose or just made the heart-pounding final moments a bit more bearable. The crew readies the boat, shifting bundles, tightening lashings, and eyeing the water for obstacles. Uncle gives instructions in a low, steady tone. Aim for the gap between those two palms. Watch for breakers. If a bird lands on the outrigger, take it as a good omen, or at least don't blame me if we get wet. You paddle in, breath held, as the boat rides the final swells. The sound of surf grows from a distant whisper to a full-bodied roar. Just when you think you'll miss the landing altogether, the canoe glides into calm water behind the reef. Barely a bump, barely a splash. Everyone erupts in whoops and cheers. Even the grumpy uncle who's sworn off enthusiasm for the entire voyage. As tradition demands, someone immediately trips over a stray rope and lands unceremoniously in the shallows. Laughter breaks any leftover tension. Landing complete, dignity optional. You take your first shaky steps onto warm sand, blinking in the bright light. The taste of salt still fresh on your lips. It hits you. You've crossed miles of open water, guided only by stories, stars, and the stubborn hope of landfall. Maybe you're on the right island, maybe not. But either way, you're here, ready for whatever stories the shore will offer. Feet in the sand, the world finally stable beneath you. You breathe deep and savor the earthy scent of new land. A fragrance that mixes sun-warmed rock, damp foliage, and 1,000 years of salt air. It's not just a physical relief, it's an emotional one. The journey may be over for now, but the social whirlwind is only beginning. Your crewmates haul the canoe ashore and start rummaging through baskets, sorting out supplies for the first meal and, naturally, the first trade. Polynesian voyaging wasn't just about the journey, it was about connection. Before long, the new island's residents appear, curious but cautious, bearing gifts that range from bundles of fruit to, once, a surprisingly melodious sea cucumber. Greetings are exchanged, and the old rules of hospitality and trade snap into action. Mainstream historians agree that these encounters were crucial for survival and for spreading knowledge. Routes, star names, and even family gossip traveled from canoe to canoe, island to island. A quirky twist. Some stories claim that gossip canoes paddled back and forth purely for the joy of swapping news, as if the Pacific was an endless neighborhood with particularly long fences. Historians still debate whether this was a formal system of diplomacy or just a convenient excuse for a change of scenery. You sit back and watch the trading dance unfold. A prize shell changes hands, followed by a woven mat, then, after some haggling, a particularly plump yam. The process is slow, almost hypnotic, and filled with good-natured teasing. "Tell your cousin he still owes me a paddle," someone shouts, prompting a wave of laughter from the crowd. The trading isn't just about objects. It's about stories, jokes, and information. What's the weather been like? Any new babies, weddings, storms, or shark sightings? News crosses the ocean faster than the swiftest canoe. Dinner is a communal affair. Everyone contributes, everyone eats, and you get the sense that no one's really a stranger for long. The meal stretches on as the sun dips low, conversations mixing with the gentle sound of waves on sand. You taste dishes flavored with island secrets, wild greens, roasted fish, and a mysterious pudding that Uncle claims is the reason people keep coming back. You're not so sure, but you go for seconds anyway. After dinner, stories fill the night. A visiting navigator tells of a storm that drove his canoe so far off course, he found himself trading songs with a bird for company. Another shares the tale of a dolphin who outsmarted a fishing crew and led them to an unexpected feast. Mainstream historians document these oral histories as more than just entertainment. They were repositories of practical knowledge, passed down and passed on, keeping everyone tuned in to the ever-changing moods of the ocean. Still, scholars debate how much these tales shifted in the telling, growing with every crossing and every campfire. It's not just men who share the news. Women swap stories too, sharing advice on plants, medicine, and, occasionally, the best way to handle a boat full of daydreamers. Information is traded, not hoarded. And you realize that the Pacific was never empty. It was, and is, a sea of voices, each one eager to connect, to teach, and to laugh. Night comes quickly. The fires glow warm on your face. You're surrounded by the music of languages you almost recognize, jokes you mostly understand, and a feeling of belonging that surprises you. Here, at Land's End, you find not an ending, but a new beginning. A chance to become part of a story that stretches from one island to the next, as vast and intricate as the ocean itself. Long after the meal, as embers glow and the moon edges up the sky, you find yourself among a group of women repairing a net, their hands quick and sure. The talk drifts to navigation, the old lessons, the forbidden tricks, the quiet pride of those who watched, listened, and remembered, even when they weren't supposed to. History's mainstream version is full of legendary male navigators, but as you listen, you hear a different story. Here, women speak softly about the sea as an old companion, about night skies learned in secret, about how unsung navigators help steer both canoes and families through storms and calm. Grandmothers remember times when navigation was quietly shared, at the edge of the cooking fire, in lullabies sung to drowsy children, in the advice tucked between chores. One tells you how she learned the stars by counting fireflies, while her father charted a course by moonlight. Another jokes about using gossip as her compass. Follow the best story, and you'll always find your way. It's half in jest, but the wisdom is real. Mainstream historians are finally catching up, finding traces in oral histories and family traditions that challenge the old assumption of men-only navigation. Still, scholars debate whether the gender boundaries were hard and fast or simply well-guarded myths. You watch as a young girl hums a chant while tying knots, copying her grandmother's movements with a seriousness that's both charming and a little intimidating. The other women encourage her, reminding you that knowledge is both inheritance and rebellion here. The line between who can and who should is blurred, especially when the weather turns or when a new island rises on the horizon. A quirky detail. On some islands, women navigators created their own secret songs, codes hidden within lullabies or woven into mat patterns, directions to hidden springs or safe landing coves. Whether these were acts of necessity, creativity, or quiet resistance, historians still argue. You smile, thinking how every navigator, no matter their gender, needs a trick or two tucked up their sleeve, just in case the ocean gets playful. Stories turn to other unsung heroes. The child who spotted an island before the adults did. The elderly aunt who remembered an old chant at just the right moment. The crew member who calmed nerves with a well-timed joke or a sweet song. Navigation, you realize, isn't just about steering a canoe. It's about steering a whole community, making sure everyone feels seen, heard, and part of the journey. The fire crackles, and you let yourself relax. Tomorrow, the canoe may set out again, or maybe you'll stay, soaking up stories and sun. Either way, You know you'll never forget the quiet strength of these women, their laughter, their secrets, their place in the endless chain of wayfinders. You close your eyes, letting their voices blend with the sound of surf. For a moment, you imagine the night sky above is stitched together with every song, every story, every navigator's dream. Soft, strong, and full of quiet power. You wake to the slow hush of waves on sand and the rising chorus of dawn birds. The ocean is calm. The canoe pulled up above the tide line, a testament to both skill and luck. Today, the shore buzzes with new energy. Young navigators compare their star chants, elders offer corrections, and everywhere you turn, the pulse of tradition beats alongside curiosity about what's next. In the soft gold light, you see a group of teenagers passing around a battered smartphone, arguing cheerfully over whether the constellation app on their screen matches what they see overhead. It's a scene that feels both ancient and utterly modern. There's an undercurrent of revival here, a sense that, while GPS and Google Earth have made the world seem smaller, they've also sparked new hunger for the old magic. Canoe clubs gather to practice age-old skills, reconstructing canoes from memory and scattered artifacts. Some spend long nights learning the stars by heart. Others listen to old navigators recount the golden rules of reading swells and reading sky. Mainstream historians celebrate these revivals, noting how Polynesian navigation has moved from near extinction to a global symbol of indigenous wisdom. The quirky part? Some young navigators now blend both worlds. One hand on the paddle, one eye on their phone, debating if a battery can outlast a cloud. You join a group at the water's edge, as they chant, their voices low and steady, weaving old words into new dreams. There are debates about what's authentic. Is it wrong to use a compass for backup? Does tradition demand bare feet, or are sneakers allowed if you're paddling at dawn? Elders smile at the arguments, knowing that every generation must find its own way between memory and invention. Still, historians argue about how much is true tradition and how much is adaptation. A dance is complex as any sea route. Someone hands you a carved paddle, smooth and heavy, the wood warm from the sun. You trace the familiar patterns, spirals, waves, stars, feeling the connection to all who have come before and all who will follow. There's laughter on the wind as a novice navigator sings a verse out of order, only to be corrected with a gentle nudge and a rhyme. The learning never ends. The questions never do, either. You wonder, quietly, if some mysteries of wayfinding will ever be solved, or if the ocean prefers to keep a few secrets just out of reach. As the day stretches on, you know your journey isn't really ending. It's become a part of you. The taste of salt, the ache of muscles, the memory of constellations slowly shifting overhead. You'll always carry the sound of paddles, the lilt of old songs, the laughter and the lullabies, wherever you go. As the afternoon melts into dusk and your story drifts toward its gentle close, the pace slows. The world softens. You find yourself walking the shoreline in the lingering gold light, toes sinking into cool sand, the hush of the sea matching the steady, sleepy rhythm of your breath. The sky above glows with traces of sunset, hints of lavender, rose, and the first hint of starlight blooming at the edges. You notice how every sound grows softer, more distant. Waves drawing delicate lines on the sand, palm leaves whispering in the gentle breeze, the faint laughter of friends echoing from the far end of the beach. You pause, close your eyes, and let all those memories of the voyage settle around you. A blanket of stories, old and new. You remember the way the canoe rocked beneath you, the shared songs, the taste of salt, the comfort of voices in the darkness. Each detail becomes part of the tapestry of your own mind, woven together with every gentle wave. With every breath, the worries of the day drift further away, replaced by a deep sense of peace. The ocean's heartbeat is slow, steady, Reassuring, you feel the gentle pull of sleep, like the tide easing you toward rest. Let yourself relax, knowing you're safe, part of a chain that stretches across time and sea. The last sounds are only the hush of water, the quiet promise of dreams, and the sure knowledge that, wherever you drift tonight, you'll be guided by memory, imagination, and the soft, unending rhythm of the Pacific.